If you'd like to see how I made this painting, watch the demo coming up. Hey, I'm Christian Bravery. Okay, so I'm an artist, concept artist mainly. I posted just a study, like a live study on Reddit last night, and that has had a lot of upvotes and a lot of comments, and in the comments section a lot of people saying, oh, this is just painted over a photo or photo bash or anything like that. So even though there's actually already an existing process video for that one, I thought today, just for fun, I'd make a new image, record it, and upload it, and maybe put some commentary on it as well, and just talk through. People seem to be interested. There's a few people saying they want to see how they go through, me to talk through the process, that kind of thing. So I thought I might do that. Right. So first up, let's. Can I zoom the camera? No. Okay. So first up, let's look at the. So this on my screen here is the photograph I took of just some crap on my desk. I got this glass of wine and one of my business cards. Yes, cork and the wireframe off the cork and a keyboard here. So there's the image. Oh, breakfast bowl. Yeah, so, and this is my workspace on my Cintiq here, and this is the screen above it. So just eyeballing the photograph, drawing, using the grid to do the initial drawing, and then we're just going to go through the demo, basically. Okay, here we go. Right, so here we have the finished painting. This is painted from scratch. You're going to watch that full process from start to finish. There's no photo elements here. This is not a photograph. This had a filter applied to it, or several filters. This is not photo bashed in any way, munged together with different photos at all. This is a clean painting. Okay, so here we go. So just doing the drawing here. This is a very old, ancient method you've probably seen before. So I started off by just creating a grid over the original photograph. In Photoshop, just add the layer, create the grid, and just have the photograph with the grid saved onto a separate screen, like in Windows Viewer or whatever, on a different screen. Then I'll copy the grid onto my canvas, which you can see here, the grey background. Just to like to have a grey background, like a middle tone background, helps. It's quite useful for getting your values right, rather than starting on plain white, which it's just trickier to get the values correct. Okay, so here we are. This is obviously speeded up. Yeah, this is. I think this particular section is at 600%. So, you know, it would have been a bit boring to like watch it all through at real time. So yeah, just got the grid on the photograph, got the grid on the canvas. Eyeballing the photograph, looking at the different lines according to the grid, and drawing it in. This is how we get the same perspective and the same angles and lines and everything that we see in the photograph. There's no tricks here. This is like I said, it's an ancient method that's been used for hundreds of years to achieve this kind of look. Yeah. So yeah, just drawing it out as simply as possible. You know, just putting in the lines that are necessary, the construction lines that are just a couple of those lines on the keyboard there. I don't need all of them because I'll do it later. Just trying to basically just lay out the basic guides for the painting ahead that we can follow later when we move into color. Yeah, so I should just mention that all that drawing there and the grid were on separate layers. So you've got the background grey layer, the base layer, and then a separate layer for the grid, obviously, and you can remove it whenever you want. And there's a separate layer which had the drawing on. So then underneath the layer which has the drawing on it, so we preserve the drawing. We can always see the drawing. We're not painting over the details and the useful information that we've got there in the drawing. We save that on a different layer. So painting underneath now, just starting with effectively an underpainting layer, just trying some different texture brushes. I can shade up these brushes with you guys. Some of them I've made myself. Some of them are just standard Photoshop brushes, maybe with some tweaks that I've done. Some of them are brushes that have been provided by other artists that have been shared online. I try various brushes by different artists from time to time. Check the whole set, spend a few minutes testing out each brush. The ones that I think are cool or useful, I'll save. The others I won't necessarily use. But yeah, I've been putting together my sort of brush set for a long time now. Yeah, happy to share the brushes that I've used in this particular painting. Not a problem. Yeah, so this is about 300 or 400% speed. This one again, just to keep it interesting, keep it moving quickly. So just right here, I'm just like not going for any detail at all. I'm just trying to capture the right values and roughly the right colors for each of the areas. Brushing it in very loosely, not concerning myself with edges really, to any great extent anyway, and just trying to get effectively an underpainting down, which captures reasonably closely what I'm looking at in the photograph, and when you're picking that out, the most important thing I think really is to get the value right, because you can make a picture look great in black and white just by getting the values right. Yeah. And then I guess secondary to that is trying to really get the hue correct. If you can get the hue and the value correct, you're 90% there. And then way down the list is edges and detail, that kind of thing. Still important, but not paramount. Okay, so yeah, at this point you can see I'm starting to use the lasso tool. So I use the polygonal lasso tool, the square one, for straight edges and angles and things like that. I use the lasso tool, the freehand one, for doing any curves. And it's just really useful to have a particular area masked out like this business card here, because you can be a lot freer with your brush strokes then, because you've got the edges marked off. So you can use nice loose broad strokes to capture an impression rather than constantly being concerned with making sure you maintain the edges. So it's a really fantastically useful tool, the lasso tool. Just using a couple of different brushes here now, just to lay in some of the shadows and details and things like that. Yeah, when it comes to selecting the right hue, it's really important to just like make it like I really don't like the idea of picking from the photo. I don't do that. I used to do it a while ago. We've all done it. We've all been guilty of doing that in the past. But I feel like for a number of reasons, it's not a good strategy. First of all, it's very lazy and you don't learn anything. So, part of the fun of doing art is that you're learning and improving, right? And you're not improving if you're just lazily picking colors off a photograph. And secondly, you find the end result is quite flat looking when you pick directly off the photo. When you run the judgment of the color sort of palette for your image through your brain, then some of your own preferences leak in, and that's part of what makes it yours. Yeah. So you tend to end up with a nicer, more holistic, cool, vivid look if you make the effort to select your own colors just by eyeballing, trying to get as close approximation as you can to what's on the in the reference material, wherever that might be, whether that's from life or whether it's from a photo as it is here. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that back there. Maybe went past too fast, but because the bowl is actually a little out of focus in the photograph, what I did was I'm selecting these different regions, using the lasso and using the marquee and that, and then later on I'm applying a feather, just a few points feather to the edge, so you maintain that soft edge just while you paint directly. It's kind of a useful one. I only just started doing that quite recently, but it means you don't have to use the blur tool so much, which is probably a good thing. I always think like you shouldn't really touch filters at all until right at the end, and even then very sparingly. The more filters you do to tweak the hue, saturation, color balance, anything like that. Once you start touching that, you're in trouble, really. So I think just do that at the end if absolutely necessary, but try to avoid it completely if you can, because it just ends up looking more and more artificial the more you mess around with that stuff, and you don't want that. You really don't want that. Okay, so just see that spoon going in with a nice soft brush, because it's quite blurred in the photo. We're just trying to replicate what we got in the photo here. There's no invention going on here, really. It's a very simple exercise. Just looking at the image and trying to replicate it. Not trying to replicate it too closely, but it's quite an impressionistic sort of image. Yeah, I mean, we're doing it quite quickly, and anyway, you kind of end up with a nicer look when you allow the strokes to breathe a bit rather than trying to control everything. Yeah, so just laying in some shadows now. Again, just always eyeballing the photograph constantly and trying to select, the colors as close to what's seen on the screen as possible. That dark there is probably a really dark, quite saturated blue, I think, as far as I can remember. I'm not actually recording this while I'm doing the painting at the same time, as you can tell by the speed the painting's going. So here now I'm just suggesting values and hues of objects in the back of the image. I'm not at all concerned about what those objects are. Yeah, doesn't matter. What are they? They're like just junk that's on my desk, like a capo and different other things. Doesn't matter, because we're just suggesting detail here. Don't get caught up when you're drawing, like trying to sort of replicate your sort of idea of what a certain thing might necessarily look like, particularly when it's in the background. This is an exercise in observation more than anything else. Yeah, you're not concerned really at all about what the objects are. Don't think of that as a glass and a business card and a cork and a keyboard and a bowl. Think of it as a unique pattern of light, shade, and color. That's how you need to think about it. Yeah, that way you're not getting obsessed with trying to replicate what a glass might look like from your inner idea of what a glass would look like. You actually recreate the glass that's actually there in the image. That's really the secret, I think, is just become completely dedicated to replicating what you can see and forget about what you know. Just look. So yeah, just putting in the all the little icons at the bottom of that screen in the background there now. So just looking at the colors, not taking too long to get them absolutely correct. Get them pretty close, using a very soft brush. Just touch them in. Some of them have got like little highlight pads in them, as you can see going in now. Other ones don't. As those have gone in, I've realized that the screen in the background is a little bit too dull looking and not bright enough. But by the way, the photograph I've got on the side of the screen there, I've added in later here in the edit. So this was actually on a separate screen in Windows Viewer, like I showed you earlier in the video, just above my drawing space on my Cintiq. So it wasn't as close as that. So you can see there are some big disparities in the mainly in the color, but also in the values at this stage. But this is a work in progress, right? So it's not like a printer. It's not going to just like print out in perfect accuracy top to bottom. We build it as we go along. So here we go, going in again with this time with the polygonal lasso, because those curves are so shallow. I felt at that point I'll just use that tool. Sometimes I might zoom out and use the lasso tool freehand, like I did there at the top edge. There's no right or wrong way. Just get the best selection you can in a reasonable amount of time without obsessing about it being utterly perfect, because it doesn't need to be utterly perfect, right? Okay, so now moving on to the glass, the bit that a lot of you might think, oh my god, they're so terrifyingly difficult to do, to get that glass correct. It's not at all. You just have to, like with everything else, just observe what's there in the photograph and replicate that. Yeah, you don't have to understand it necessarily even. Yeah, I mean, you're learning to understand it by making this image, by doing this process. Yeah, so that if at some point you do need to, I don't know, make up a similar thing, you've got some experience of what how the glass behaves with the light and how the refraction of the objects behind works. Of course, with all the best advice there's caveats, right? Because if you just change the angle of the light and you just move that business card slightly, then the refraction and the lighting would be completely different. So there's no like right and wrong solution that you can always go to, yeah? It's just about looking, right? I did actually go in there and just go over and ramp up the saturation a little bit, which I earlier told you shouldn't do, so I've been a bit naughty there, but I just felt that it needed to happen at that point. So, like I say, try to avoid it, but if you do it very sparingly. So yeah, although you can't see it now because the crawlies have disappeared, I hit Control H to hide the helpers there. The selection for the glass, the general outline of the glass is still in place at this point. So I'm only worried about painting what's actually inside the selection, so I don't have to worry about my edges here. So just again, trying to pick the correct color, get as close as possible. There's a blend between sort of purples and oranges in that bloom off the so that's actually a light this off high to the right of the image in my office. This reflecting off the second screen there and catching up the edge of the glass, and because the actual light itself is a warm light and the screen itself is giving out a cool light, then there's an interesting blend between those purples and oranges there. But not really necessarily worrying about that while I'm doing the painting. I'm just looking at the photograph again, just trying to replicate close as possible, quickly as possible, without getting detail obsessed, how the light values are working. So here some of the reflections on the front edge, on the front side, the glass going in. Notice there's a blue field there. I'm not sure what that's what's producing them. Probably light out of the screens, I guess. Again, in this kind of operation, just observe it in relation to each other. What specific color you need to do. You need to use to put in place to recreate what you got in the photograph there. So just painting in the details of how the business cards refracted into the bottom of the glass there, through the wine and through the actual glass itself. Just getting those highlights in, just those little thin edges of highlights at the edge of the wine. Little suggestions of detail on the keyboard. I think they're just some of the notations on the keys. I think there's a bit of dodge going on there just to lighten things up a bit. That might be bit of hue. Oh, we're back in painting now, just adding in some more highlights in where the glass is thicker, where the stem drains at the bottom of the glass itself. Catches a lot of light down there where the glass thickens up at the angles. Just getting that vivid bit of red coming through the stem. Just getting those different highlights in. Just looking all the time. Every couple of strokes, I'll be looking back at the source material itself, just really analyzing it, not making anything up really, just look, try to replicate, look again, try to replicate, always just being a slave to the source material and dedicating yourself to just observing it as best you can and getting it as accurate as possible without being super precious and over obsessed with the detail. Yeah, so just quickly just to get that selection in again there, just loosely marquee it and then use the free transform tool. Do a fill because you can't use free transform on just a selection, so just on a separate layer, just really loose circular marquee, fill, then lower the opacity, then do like delete the selection, free transformation, and then just rotate and squeeze it until it matches the shape of the of the base of the glass there. So then you've got that selection, and you don't have to worry about the edges again. You can just get in there and paint, get those highlights and colors in there, and the shadows, etc., etc. Okay, just getting the shadow in under the glass there. Moving on to the cork by the looks of it. Yeah, so just using the freehand lasso tool just to select the shape of the actual cork itself there, which is behind the business card and behind the sort of wire frame. Just like picking those oranges and yellows for the cork, looking closely as possible, trying to replicate the photograph, getting it brighter on the top where the light's hitting it, picking the warm shadow underneath where it's getting some warm bounce light off the desk. You don't necessarily need to know all that stuff, but you just observe and you'll learn that stuff, like where is going to be a cool shadow, where there's going to be a warm shadow. You kind of need to know that when you're making stuff up more. You're working on an image, you can't just copy it from a photo. Like, this is just a study. But in this particular case, it's just about replicating what you can see. So you don't necessarily need to know where you have to have a cool shadow or a warm shadow, where the light is warm or cool. Just observe, and you'll learn it from there. Yeah, you'll learn these cases if you do this kind of thing. So cork's done, writing's gone in. Again, just looking, so that S is like warmer than the A due to the shadow that it's under. Going in, painting the wireframe and the cap. It's quite shiny because the light's coming right on top of it, so it's like full white there for the top of the cap. You got warm lights, you got cool shadows on this left hand side because there's like a cool light coming from the monitor there, off screen to the left. Yeah, so just working on adding those details there. Little you can't really see it too great here. Perhaps it's not zoomed in enough. Just getting those final little bits of details where just suggesting where the wire is like twisted, etc. Getting the little shadows in so it sits in place like a physical object, in 3D space. I think in a minute we're going to move on to the keyboard. I think at this point I'm just trying to find which thing is on which layer. Yeah, I wanted to put the keyboard in the right place in the stack. Basically, the stack is effectively organized according to how close each particular object is to the camera, the front of the screen. So ideally, you want to have any bleed going underneath the thing that's in front of it. So yeah, just selected the very outline of the keyboard and then just lining in the key details. Sometimes using hold down shift or shift and dot to get the straight lines that you're looking for. These are just all drawn in freehand, just quickly observing roughly the layout of the keys on the keyboard. I think here I'm using the blur tool just to take the sharpness off the back edge of the keyboard detail in there. Putting the front shadow in there. Adding some warm softness to the front edge of the shadow just to match the photo. Just a bit of dodge there to just brighten up the leather on the desk. Now moving on to adding the print details on the business card. So I'm not worrying about that writing up the side, they're just suggesting it with some lines, some soft lines. Not being tempted to take the actual card itself as a photograph and just put it on top like it would be easy to do in Photoshop, but rather drawing it freehand, eyeballing it for the beams, for the sunbeams. Just again using that polygonal lasso tool just to roughly select them out not being too precious, just, you know, eyeballing again the source material, get it as close as possible within reason, just doing it quickly. And then just get a broad brush and just put in, yeah, just a bit of looseness at the top edge there, so just cut that out again using the lasso. I didn't like the hand painted feel of the bottom piece, so just select it and fill it in again, just sort out a few of the details. The robot was looking a bit too skinny there, so just fatten him up a bit by the eraser. A little bit of a raise on the bottom edge there, just a softer raise, take a little bit of the brightness off it. I think I'm just working through, just doing some little tiny retouches here and there just to the highlights. So, yeah, just a really soft brush there, just suggesting the notations on the keys. Don't have to put the actual correct things in, just the little dot just to suggest it is fine, because that's not fully in focus. I'm just adding in some of the fine shaping details on the edge of the glass where the lip has got little folds in it, so you just add in the shadows and the highlights just to suggest the shape of the detail at the top of the glass there. A few more highlights going in, just to pop it a bit more. This is much analysing the whole painting and just feeling where, you know, it needs to be brightened up or darkened down here and there. I think I'm adding a bit of, yeah, so lasso, feather, and then sharpen just at the front on the glass there. And then I flip the selection and just do a tiny bit of Gaussian blur on the background there, and then another layer, just erasing through so that there's a nice blend between the two. And then this is just a bit of burn, just to add a bit of weight to those shadows there underneath the monitor. We're getting pretty close to finishing now. Just a few, yeah, a little bit of dodge there just on the highlights, just to bloom those a little bit out. Get a bit closer to the photo. And there we are, we're done. I hope you liked that. I hope that was useful to you guys. Again, my name's Christian Bravery. You can find me on Instagram at Christian Bravery. You can find me on Twitter at _brave. You can find me on YouTube. Just search for C Bravery. And my business website, which is www.leadinglightdesign.com. I'm planning on doing a few more of these. Hopefully it'll be an ongoing thing. Lots and lots of things to talk about, different areas of art, with not just these study pieces, but with concept art, illustration work. I'm working on a big personal project, so I'll probably be introducing that soon. I'm going to be doing a Patreon, launching that pretty soon. So yeah, hopefully see you guys next time. Thanks very much.